Carter Show.
Right. So let me just remind you, we had a chat with Tembisa Fakude a few days ago, and we spoke about what may happen if Vladimir Putin comes to South Africa. He's the Russian leader, remember that? And he's been invited, as is expected, as one of the leaders of the five BRICS nations, right? You know, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. So he should be coming to South Africa in August. In the meantime, the ICC, the International Criminal Court, has issued out a warrant of arrest for him, particularly, well, specific in general around the war between Russia and Ukraine, but in particular the sense that many Ukrainian children were abducted, obviously against their will, from Ukraine and taken to Russia. It is in that context that the international warrant, the warrant for arrest for him, was taken out, and we spoke about it. And please, if you can, watch that on YouTube on the Salam Media podcast. A really fascinating chat. But that was a couple of days ago. Now, the Minister of International Relations, Naledi Pandor, she welcomed a Russian high-level diplomat a few days ago, and naturally, she was asked about the Putin factor. And this is what she said.
In our meeting, because there are some who don't wish us to have relations with an old historical friend. We have made it clear that Russia is a friend, and we've had cooperative partnerships for many, many years, including partnerships as we combated the apartheid regime, which decimated our people and our country. And while we are friends with many all over the world, we cannot become sudden enemies at the demand of others.
Okay, well, there you are. I mean, it's an ongoing story. We know that, but perhaps 2 points comes out of it, right? Obviously, the Russians or the Soviet Union or the USSR was a big friend of all the freedom fighters in exile from South Africa. And absolutely, the ANC being one of them, understandably so. The question has been asked, whether this Russia is that USSR or is that USSR and this is Russia, because that USSR included the Ukraine as part of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. So that particular entity doesn't exist any longer. The other parties, like, they are our chommies. They've always been our chommies, no matter what. But if we follow that same, and it's an interesting point, okay? But if you follow that same line, can you just imagine if apartheid South Africa at that time, I'm talking about, say, and then Britain and the Netherlands, who were basically partners in terms of the colonization of South Africa. If the apartheid, if Britain and the Netherlands decide to say, well, we can't speak out against apartheid because they were our friends, for example. So, at what stage does friendship start? At what stage does friendship end? At what stages do the principles and the values that you pursue as a country kick in and take precedence over all else, even if it means there's a relationship breakdown around that? But perhaps if you listened to the earlier conversation that we had around Thabo Mbeki's criticism of the ANC around Ramaphosa, well, perhaps you'll understand that the ANC is at this point in time an organization that speaks many, many different voices, and that makes it very difficult to understand their language. We'll talk about the language of pensions and investments right after this.
You are listening to Salam Media live from our headquarters in South Africa. This is Salam Media, keeping you company this Ramadan. This is Salam Media, and you are tuned into the Ashraf Garda Show.
Right, so 27-4, we talk to them all throughout the month of Ramadan. They do great work in terms of looking after your monies, investments, growth, all the things that absolutely matter to you besides finding your job, I would think. The question is, what about understanding where you are as a person, and basically your money for when you stop working. I'm talking about pensions and pension funds and provident funds and what that really means. So my guest today is Masood Harneker, who's the business development manager at 274. Masood, appreciate your time. Salaam alaikum, Juma Mubarak, and welcome to the show.
Wa alaikum salam, Ashraf. Thank you for having me on today.
Thank you. Well, we're talking at a time when perhaps the pensions are lasting on people's minds. Those who have home loan bonds, and it could be the vast majority in the country that do that, would be saying, "Oh my goodness, interest rates have gone up. I have even less money to spend." Right. But having said that, we do talk about pension funds and provident funds and RAs. So perhaps give us a breakdown of what the three mean very briefly.
Sure. Firstly, Ashraf, all of them are retirement funds in South Africa that is regulated by the Pension Funds Act. I think maybe let me start off with Provident Fund and pension funds, simply because they're both what we call occupational retirement funds. So what that basically means is that there are funds where there is an employee-employer relationship. So there's a company, and the company has one of these funds, and through condition of employment, you are eligible to join. So the purpose of both pension and provident funds is effectively to pay you a pension after retirement. And if I can give you an example, Ashraf, on average, members of retirement funds in South Africa contribute roughly around 12% of their salary towards retirement funds. So you're making these contributions to retirement funds, and hopefully it's invested in a very well-diversified portfolio. And at retirement, you would have accumulated a savings spot that would hopefully sustain you after retirement. So with pension fund members, they are able to access at least 1/3 of the savings in cash at retirement. With the remaining 2/3, you have to purchase a compulsory pension annuity. Now, with the recent reforms in retirement funds, provident funds are treated very similar. So post 1 March 2021, the treatment is in fact quite similar to pension funds. Now, with regards to retirement annuities, on the other hand, they catered more for self-employed individuals or members that are part of a company, but the company doesn't offer a workplace fund. And retirement annuities are very similar to pension funds in that at retirement, you can access 1/3 in cash, with the remaining 2/3 purchasing a compulsory pension annuity. Then lastly, also one very important type of retirement fund is called the preservation fund. And as the name suggests, with preservation funds, it allows you to preserve your pension and provident fund when you change jobs. I read a recent report or study by the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, and what they reckon is that almost 90% of South Africans can't maintain their standard of living after retirement. And a big contributor to this problem is, in fact, when people change jobs, they're not preserving the retirement funds and they're cashing in. So I can't stress enough the importance of preserving your retirement fund. And then also there are tax benefits. So apart from the advantage of having a dedicated vehicle to save for retirement, government also affords you tax benefits in the form of tax deductible contributions. So when you make contributions to your retirement fund, at the moment you can claim up to 27.5% of the higher of taxable income or your remuneration, capped at 350,000 Rand per tax year. So there's clear benefits of investing in this type of investment vehicles.
I mean, interesting you speak about people cashing in on their retirement funds, and I would think, and as a result of that, they don't have any regular income thereafter. And the reasons are pretty obvious, because they simply can't afford it and they need that lump sum to pay off some debt. I would think that's why most people do so, right? But here's the question, therefore, right? Once they cash in and they then don't have this regular income beyond that, right? How can they redeem that situation, considering that they're much older now, right?
Yeah. So generally what happens is that if you don't save enough for retirement, you tend to supplement your income post-retirement. So one of the important things that we need to remember is, and mitigating this risk, is try and start as early as possible to save for retirement. And in that sense, you're making regular contributions, and in fact, you are sort of benefit from the effects of compounding. So compounded growth, what it basically means is you're not only earning returns on your capital, but you're earning returns on your returns. I mean, I think it was Albert Einstein that said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that compounding is the eighth wonder of the world. So the earlier you start saving for retirement, the better. In fact, I would say the likelihood of achieving retirement goals or your outcomes that you would like to achieve is greatly increased the earlier you start for retirement. And if you don't save enough, as I said, you've got to find some form of way to supplement your income post-retirement.
So when is it too late to start a pension fund or a provident fund or a retirement annuity? I mean, I understand the earlier the better. I got that, but uh, I'm just thinking about the KFC Colonel Sanders factor, where I think he started the first franchise at 55 or close to 60, whatever. What I'm saying, when is it too late? Assuming you haven't done it, and maybe there are people watching us and listening who haven't done so. When is it too late, and when can you still start, no matter what?
Yeah, look, it's never too late. It's just the fact that the later you start, the more you have to contribute, right? So I think like we said, the earlier you start, the better, but it's never too late to start. The only difference being the later you start, the more you need to contribute towards these retirement funds.
Okay, what about implications with regard to these type of funds from a taxation point of view?
Yeah. I think very important to make a distinction with this. So you pre-retirement withdrawals, and you also get a withdrawal that you make at retirement. So I'll basically explain both and maybe unpack the tax implications. So generally what happens is that if you're below the age of 55 and you access your retirement fund, you need cash for whatever the reason may be, that's called a pre-retirement withdrawal. Now, if you go that route and you opt for a pre-retirement withdrawal, SARS taxes you according to a withdrawal tax table. And in the withdrawal tax table, the first 27,500 Rand is tax-free, with the rest of the capital or cash that you take, the cash portion that you take is taxed at 18%, 27%, and 36% progressively. So the more cash you take, the more tax you pay. And conversely, if you look at retirement, that's from the age of 55 upwards. If you make a withdrawal at that point, SARS will tax you according to a retirement fund lump sum tax table. And if at that point you withdraw, the first 550,000 Rand is tax-free. So you can see that accessing your cash pre-retirement is discouraged by the government because the taxes are much more punitive. And in fact, you'd be paying tax on an additional 522,000 Rand in cash. These are important decisions. And once you make these decisions, I would encourage you to consult a financial advisor who can guide you through these various considerations that you need to make.
Well, I'm going to suggest that they speak to you guys at 27.4, pretty obviously. Before I get to that and the details there, let's talk about the value of a 13th check. I mean, 13th check holiday, pay off a debt, pay off your school fees. You have thoughts on the 13th check regarding, securing your future?
Sure. Look, a 13th or any bonus for that matter. I mean, if you're coming into any additional income, I think it comes down to being responsible with your finances. So I would always look at a couple of options, right? The first thing I'd look at is settling any debt that you may have. I mean, you don't want to incur any additional finance costs or unnecessary finance costs. So I would suggest settling debt. That's the first starting point. Then I would definitely look at topping up any of your retirement funds, simply because of the tax benefits. So with tax deductible contributions, topping up a retirement fund is fantastic because it reduces your overall tax liability. And then thirdly, I would also look at topping up perhaps a tax-free savings account. With the tax-free savings, the growth within the tax-free savings account is, as the name suggests, tax-free. So those are three options that I would definitely look at when it comes to any additional income that you
Good advice. Perhaps the last thing here, how much do you need to retire comfortably? I mean, how do we go about, determining that as a factor? Because maybe you and I have different needs, but the certain figure is what's required, right?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? How much do we need to save for retirement? And I think, look, it's largely lifestyle dependent, and it would vary from person to person. But as a general rule of thumb, and I must stress this, a general rule of thumb, many financial advisors would tell you target a 75% replacement ratio. So what that basically means, Ashraf, is that for every 1,000 Rand that you've earned prior to retirement, look to replace at least 75% of that after retirement. So in other words, for every 1,000 Rand that you earn pre-retirement, look to replace 750 Rand post-retirement. So practically speaking, how do you achieve this? And I would think that, or the data suggests that members of retirement funds that contribute between 15 and 17% of their salary over a 40-year period tend to get very close to that 75% inflation ratio. So that's a good yardstick. So try and save between 15 and 17% of your salary towards a retirement fund. And in that sense, you'd get as close as possible to that 75% inflation ratio.
And that will help
Again,
you
this is
because
the-
the 70% will help because would assume you have less expenses. You don't have to pay for school fees for your children or university fees. You probably don't need to buy a house. You probably don't need to buy a car in retirement, and therefore the 70 would make sense, right?
Correct. And also remember, you're investing these funds in a very long period of time, so you're benefiting from that compounding. But also very importantly, Ashraf, remember I said that on average, South Africans are saving around 12% of their salary. So when they should be between 15 and 17%. So the truth is that most South Africans have not saved enough for retirement. So this is something that definitely needs to be looked at. So what I again recommend is sitting down with a financial advisor, looking at what your retirement fund contributions are, and assessing whether there is a retirement gap that needs to be closed.
Yeah, good point. Right, let's talk about advice that people need to turn to. I'm going to suggest they speak to you guys, right? So give me some contact details.
Yeah, sure. So what I would suggest is, again, you can either contact, and I would urge you to contact a authorized, licensed financial advisor, licensed by the Financial Sector Conduct Authority.
Yeah.
Alternatively, as you mentioned, they're welcome to contact us at 274 Investment Managers at 274.com or info@274, info@274.com. And as mentioned, our number is 0800 000 274. They can contact us, and we'll gladly help them in whatever their financial requirements are.
Okay, and that's where we're going to leave it. 274 is spelled number 2, number 7, and then in letters FOUR. Masood, Harneker, appreciate your time. Very, very informative. It certainly is going to perhaps reassure many others, but maybe press an alarm bell for others listening to say, what have I done? I need to secure my future if I can. Appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Right. Right. Let's move on now. We have a feature called Champion Spotting, where it's inspired by what I do at Champion South Africa. We try and look at ex-champion acts that we think need to be looked at and celebrated. Rihanna Musaji, who's very much from the Johannesburg community, doing fabulous things, I think, in the area adjacent to Crosby. We'll talk to her in a moment.